Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jess Pearson and I'm the Consultant Psychologist at PPS. As you can see, today I'm going to be talking about some of the psychological impacts of 2020 related to the COVID pandemic and lessons that we can take with us into 2021. So I'm going to be talking about sort of 5 lessons today, and I will recap them at the end. But just to start off with, I think it's important initially to just acknowledge how tough a year it has been for everybody. There have been huge challenges for individuals across the globe this year. In Australia, we have been reasonably lucky compared to some other countries. But we have all been away from loved ones at certain points throughout this year. Many of us have had to work from home or completely change our business's day-to-day functioning. Some have actually lost jobs and businesses and had to completely start again. Some people have missed out on some major life milestones this year, and we've heard from a lot of individuals who've had to homeschool their kids, many who have experienced significant mental health challenges, and some have even had family members fall ill and not be able to visit, which has obviously been incredibly challenging. Some have actually even lost family members to COVID or other illnesses and still had to distance themselves. So all in all, it's been a year that none of us predicted, but we have made it through. And so this brings me to my first lesson from this year, which is it has been a year of many emotions. So there was a recent study in the International Journal of Medicine which sort of summarised some of the most common psychological reactions to the pandemic this year. So I'm going to list some of them: anxiety, stress, depression, irritability, anger, boredom, loneliness, and exhaustion. Grief has also been a common reaction, and whilst of course this can apply to losing somebody that you love, it's also been associated with the loss of other meaningful elements of life. So for example, you might feel grief for the year that you wish you had this year, or for the job or business plan you lost. All of these reactions that I've mentioned are valid and understandable. And as the saying goes, it's okay to not be okay. But what we do need to consider is really naming what we are feeling, really acknowledging what we're feeling so that we can work out what we need to do to move through it. So that's the first lesson of this year. It's been a year of many emotions, but if we name what those emotions are or what our experience is, it then allows us to be able to work through what we can do about it. Lesson number 2, we can adjust to change even if we don't like it. So as I mentioned in one of my talks earlier in the year, the human brain responds best to predictability, which is why so many of us have experienced anxiety this year, trying to deal with all of the changes we've had to face. The thing about anxiety, though, is that we tend to underestimate our coping capacity, when in reality, we tend to just take one step at a time, and each step as it comes, to work our way through the challenges that are in front of us. At PPS, we've seen individuals have to start afresh in brand new roles. We've seen business owners completely reevaluate how they do business this year. And some have even had to let go of a previous business idea to make something else work in the pandemic. I guess the bottom line here is we have adjusted to change and we are more resilient than we think. So I think this is an important thing for us all to reflect on and to take into next year. Which brings me to point number 3, or lesson number 3. Despite the challenges of this year, we have become more innovative than ever. So at PPS, we've heard countless stories of how individuals and business owners have changed their trajectory to adjust to the pandemic. So whether it be moving an entire business to home offices, offering different services for an individual, rewriting a CV to open up diverse opportunities, perhaps even engaging with other businesses to collaborate on projects. Innovation has been all around us this year, and I think this is something that we can take with us into the new year. I guess this knowledge that we can work around a crisis, we can be innovative, we can be creative. Lesson number 4, we've learnt to appreciate the simple things. This is something that has been spoken a lot about by people this year, and one of the most common comments I've had from my clients has been how much they've realised they value the simple things like quality time with family, sitting down in a coffee shop, playing team sport, smiling at a neighbour. In business, it could even be sitting around a table with colleagues and brainstorming ideas, one of those things that we might have taken for granted in the past or just not been sort of totally mindful of. The pandemic has forced us to slow down this year and notice some things that our brains usually whiz by in the day-to-day. Humans are really good at thinking forward to the future, worrying about things coming up and sort of ruminating on things that have happened in the past. But this year has really forced us to be in the present, to really appreciate those simple moments. Research evidence tells us that having those moments, being mindful and being grateful for some of these things can have a significant impact on our mood. And again, this is something that we can take with us as we go forward and continue to navigate this. And my final sort of lesson that we have learnt this year that we can take forward is we are better together than apart. So it sounds like a cliche, but I'm going to sort of talk about it in a bit more detail. Individuals' reactions to the pandemic have obviously been highly varied this year. In some cases, there's been a lot of hostility towards others. So we've seen people fighting over toilet rolls. We've seen people overgeneralizing one person's poor decision making to entire communities. What we know psychologically is that in many cases these reactions represent people's fear. So fear of the transmission of the virus. So, they start hoarding toilet rolls. They start sort of labeling certain communities out of fear. But the research tells us that harboring this kind of hostility can worsen our mental health over time. On the flip side, we've also seen many examples of communities really banding together whilst physically apart this year. So we've seen individuals stepping out of the way to let others pass on the street, offering to buy elderly or vulnerable neighbours groceries, keeping away, obviously, from loved ones for the good of society as a whole. On the business front, we've seen business owners collaborate with others for, novel ideas, like I mentioned before. We've seen promotion of other small businesses on social media, and business owners really demonstrating flexibility for staff so that they can continue to work at their best and adjust to things like having children at home. These are all examples of holding compassion for others and possibly even a sense of what we call common humanity. So the ability to see one's own experience as part of the human condition and really being able to relate to others in that respect. The research tells us that these kinds of responses tend to be associated with emotional well-being. And so if we are able to hold that compassion for others, if we are able to find those similarities between us and others, this is something that will benefit us going into the new year as well. So those are our 5 lessons for this year, and this is actually the last upload that I will be doing for this year. I'll be back next year. So I'm just going to summarize these 5 lessons for you to take away. The first one being, it's been a year of many emotions, but it's okay to not be okay. And if we can label our emotional experiences, it helps us to determine, you know, where we need to go next. Number 2, we can adjust to change even if we don't like it. We are much more resilient than we think. Number 3, despite the challenges of this year, we've become more innovative than ever, and we can use that innovation going forward. Number 4, we've learnt to appreciate the simple things. And number 5, we're better together than apart. And that really is illustrated by the effects of banding together on our mental health and emotional well-being. So that is my final talk for the year, everybody. Thank you so much to all of the people who have been following these videos, all of our fellow colleagues and clients who have been tagging along with us this year. It's been a really big one, but we are so grateful for all of the relationships with those people. And we look forward to sharing some more videos next year. So take care, everybody, and have a lovely festive season. We will see you again very soon.